All right, welcome to the global exclusive podcast where each week we'll be bringing together some of the most well-known people in the FFB community. This time, however, for our first episode, all of those people were busy, so you're just going to have us instead.
It's Regina.
It's Regina.
Yeah, I'm just impressed Moospel is actually doing trials. Is anyone else?
Oh no, he is just asking for a mute.
Move it slowly away from your face as you're talking. 'Cause that's what it sounds like.
The most impressive of all the units, which is definitely not Chow, but let's start with Chow. I'm Hazard, and the reason I'm here is because I'm too ugly for television. I'm also joined by our regular contributors, Barros, Cottonseed, Muspel, Shadowwalker, and a special mention to Dream Blitz, who's not here this week, but will be joining us for future podcasts. So we're going to go down the list and introduce ourselves, just so you guys can recognize our voices and understand the contributions we've made to the community.
All right, I'm Barros, and the only reason I'm here is because we were too afraid to ask Meme Lord.
I'm Cottonseed, and I'm here to provide justice for Chow.
I'm Muspel, and I'm here because the Katy Perry fans needed representation.
My name is Shadowwalker, and I'm here. I'm Dyer's Black Market Lapis Dealer.
That's wonderful. Thank you guys all for being here. This week, we've got a couple different topics we want to cover. First being the new trial that came out, the Scorn of the Great Explosion Festival. We'll also be talking about the Chinese New Year latent and enhancement abilities that came out this week, as well as a segment on the Wiki Ratings, both the official Wiki Ratings that you guys are probably familiar with that Muspel posts every week, as well as the tier list that's headed by Shadowwalker that's also posted on a weekly basis. So let's get right into it about the bomb trial. And Shadowwalker, do you want to talk to us a little bit about what this trial is and kind of the basic mechanics of it?
Scorn of the Great Explosion Festival is basically the old Bomb family trial, but a bit harder, I guess. So I'll first go over the rewards because there's a two-handed demon axe. I think that's probably our best axe that's not an STMR. Some trust coins and an UOC ticket. So the Bomb family is really straightforward. They have really hard-hitting single-target physical attacks and decently hard-hitting AoE physical attacks. And once you kill one of the bombs, the dad or the mom, so there's a mom bomb and the dad bomb. Say that fast 5 times. But so if you kill any of the either bombs, they'll become strong. They'll become angry and they'll do extra moves. So the goal of the fight is actually either you can approach this in 2 different ways. Is you kill both bombs at the same time, so you don't have to go through the crap of them becoming really strong, or you kill the mom first because I found that to be generally easier, and then you kill the dad afterward. So that's a very short TLDR of the trial. Yeah.
Awesome.
A couple of other notes about the trial is that each of the parents is immune to non-elemental damage and immune to all elements except one. You can imperil a bunch of the elements and damage them with something else, but it's typically best to damage the mom with ice, which she's natively weak to,
And the dad
and
with
damage
fire.
the dad with fire, who's weak. And the mom absorbs fire and the dad absorbs ice, and they'll actually start to imbue you with their own elements when they get low on health once the other one is dead. So that can be a little tricky to deal with.
Which is why some people recommend taking magic damage dealers, because you don't have to worry about the imbues at all by that point. But
That's actually what I did.
yeah.
And you can use other elements because other than their main elements, which is like fire for the
Fire
mom
and
and ice for the dad, the mom and dad bombs actually only have 150% resistance to the other elements. So with a strong enough impure, you can still damage them with, say maybe earth element or dark element attack.
Yeah, I would say that 100% is probably a good baseline imperil if you're using something other than the elements that they're weak to. Like, you can get by with less, but if you're using like an 80% imperil, then your damage is going down by quite a bit.
Yeah. So that's the trial.
Although the trial doesn't really have any enrage mechanics, so you can just slug it out.
True.
Technically, they are a bit like.
So
I guess
Mom
like
bomb
if you can
spams
burst
a lot
hard, it's
more
good.
attacks. Yeah. Under 50%, they do spam a lot more attacks.
What are some of the difficulties that you'd have surviving for a long period of time?
So it depends on which parent you kill first. If you kill the mom first, then you have to deal with the dad who starts to
Magic AoE.
yeah, well, he does magic AoE, and he'll also use single target provoke and cover piercing elemental attacks. So if you've geared for elemental resists, which you really should do in general on this fight, and if you have resistance buffs, that's not too threatening, but it can certainly hit hard. And if you kill the dad first, and the mom starts using provoke and cover piercing physical attacks, and those hurt pretty bad. You can deal with them. Ideally, you would have Mirage or something going on, but if not, you can still survive them, although it's probably a good idea to have AoE re-raise.
And even under 50% health, the bomb starts spamming even more single target physical attacks. So it's good. Mirage is definitely one of the better threats for this fight.
Don't have
so
Mirage,
Lock is
though-
an amazing breaker.
Yeah, and if you don't have Mirage, though, that killing mom first is probably your best bet. Because a lot of dad's attacks you can just ignore if you have the right resistance, which is ice and fire, I think.
Yep.
Right? And once you
Yeah.
have those resistance, dad doesn't hit as hard as mom does. And I think mom's attacks aren't elemental at all, so it's like, get wrecked.
Yeah, those are going to hurt quite a bit if you aren't using Mirage. I mean, they are survivable. I killed the dad first because it was early in the morning and I wasn't paying attention to the mechanics and I wasn't really thinking about it. And a few units did come close to death, but I was also using a team that's probably stronger than what a lot of people are going to be using when they go into this trial. So it's not what I would recommend.
How did everyone else beat the trial? I know, Muspel, you mentioned that you cheesed it. But
I used, let's see, what was my team comp? I had Lena, trying to remember my other team members.
While you're remembering, I actually remember my team comp because I took a screenshot of it when I completed it. I did the opposite route. I actually killed the mom first and then the dad. So what I did is I brought Sylvie, Myra, Awakened Warrior of Light, Kryla, and then 2 Circes or Circe or
Kirk.
Kirke or however you want to pronounce it. But
Cersei.
cool mage. So I thought Sylvie was really helpful for this, and someone like Ignis or someone else that has really high buffs to those specific elemental resistances would be helpful. Because as Muscle mentioned, once you take the mom down, you start taking some elemental damage AoE to the party.
Mhm.
So that was really helpful to have Sylvie in my pocket, and I know her LB cost looks pretty high, but with a couple items to increase your LB fill, it's pretty easy to get it up every 2 or 3 turns.
So I used Dr. Iden, Ignis, Awaken Warrior Light, Hesking Laswell, and Kryla. One thing that Hesking Laswell actually does really well is that his 2 imbues are actually fire and ice. So in the first phase, I killed the mom first, so I used ice, which she's weak to, and then by the time his imbue runs down, mom will be dead, and then you'll be killing the dad, which is then you imbue with fire. So that was really helpful using Laswell, but also it was the week that Laswell came out, so I just wanted to use him. Ignis again, yeah, as Hazard already mentioned, it's kind of with all LA resist. I didn't use any evades or mirages, and I felt like if I did, it would have been helpful. Dr. Iden could spam his single target evade onto wall when he was provoking, so that really did help. But otherwise, it's a straightforward fight. It was really straightforward. There was nothing else to look forward to. Like, there wasn't
Yeah, I was kind of surprised at how easy it was, actually. I didn't use any mirages or evasion or anything like that. And my units, I mean, Cersei's not like the tankiest of mages either, and didn't have a problem at all.
Exactly. So it's really straightforward. There's no weird gimmick you have to look forward to, or AoE death or some shit like that. So yeah, it was pretty easy.
I actually like that about the trial. Unfortunately, it just didn't hit hard enough to be like a big threat, though. But I like that the trial didn't have bullshit mechanics, though.
Did anyone encounter anything weird or unexpected in the trial that they didn't really know what they were dealing with? I know Muscle, you said you kind of went in blind in the morning.
Yeah, I mean,
Oh,
I had looked at the fight mechanics before, but it was early in the morning and I wasn't thinking very much. I was just like, I have Xuan. I can probably run physical cover and then the magic won't hurt because he has ridiculous SPR. And then the random physical attack started flying around. And then I dealt with that for a few turns. And then I remembered that Xuan had Mirage and started using that. Did I mention it was early in the morning?
I didn't know that Dad would start imbuing. So there's if you know Hesking Laswell's rotation, he has one big burst turn after like 5 turns of setup. And I hit that burst turn, but the Dad kept absorbing the damage. And I was like, what the hell's going on? And then I realized that Laswell was imbued with.
I had the same thing. I got imbued with fire at some point, and Cersei, her normal turns when she's just quad casting don't use any physical elements, but her limit burst and also her Ouroboros
Cooldown.
spell both use physical elements attached. So I remember I took the Dad down to 60% health that first turn, and then the second turn I used my LB and it healed him to full, and I was like, wait, what the heck? I couldn't remember what was happening.
I had an embarrassing imbue moment too, because I like to use finishers. So I had a team of 2 Noctis trying to go for the turn 3 kill. And I got bad RNG on my first try. So I didn't kill the mom. She went down to 8% on turn 3. And then, of course, on turn 4, she imbued me, and I had not prepared at all because I was running Ignis and Ignacio as my imbuers, and Ignis has this weird setup turn. So I actually did defeat the trial by turn 8 or something in my first attempt, just because I had to live through 6 turns of randomly mom killing my units until I had a good turn where I could actually take the final 8% off of her. So that was a bit embarrassing. But the second try was a
yes.
good try.
The slaps.
You got slapped for being a noob.
Yeah, but
Sorry, go ahead.
no, I was just gonna say I actually didn't know she could imbue because I only went in by the quick. Sinzar does these posts on Reddit where he does the pre trial post or something where he does give you some tips, and I just went in with those. So I actually had no idea she could imbue. So yeah.
I would have thought he mentioned the imbues in those tips.
Yeah, but I'm not great at paying attention and reading stuff in general, so I probably just missed it.
So I remember my team comp now, and the reason why I had trouble remembering it is because it's a bad team comp. I had AI Katie, who is not very useful on this fight because you don't need breaks. I had Awakened Warrior of Light, who's good. I had Lunafreya, useful, I guess. Lena, and then 2 copies of Xuan. And the problem with that team comp, which you might be thinking, is that I don't have a source of 100% uptime on 50% mitigation. So that was also a little messy.
See, you're the casual player that we're always talking about in Wiki Ratings that would be silly enough to walk in to a fight without uptime on mitigation.
Yes.
Well,
So
I
this whole
didn't
tier
use
list
any
was for
mitigation.
yourself the whole
I mean,
point.
I should have brought Lucas, because Lucas would have been able to imbue with fire and ice, and he would have been able to provide 50% mitigation, and he would have had Mirage, and so on. But I decided to use Wool instead, and I don't know why.
This is actually my first fight
because
using
you had to
Warrior of
bring in
Light.
AIKT.
Oh, you had to because he loves AI Katie and had to represent.
Well, she was
Yeah.
already geared.
Yeah, I think this just generally thinking about the last few trials, right? We had Iron Giant, and we had the SBBs. We had Chaos and Arden. I feel like the last few trials have been way too straightforward and easy. And we've
Well,
already
from
gone-
what I understand, in Japan, the players were complaining that the series boss battles were too hard. And in Japan, you have to beat those to unlock new passes for the units on the new banners. So they started making the
Right.
series boss battles a lot easier so that people could clear the bosses and then they would be incentivized to pull for these new units that had strong abilities. So from what I've read, all of the future series boss battles are going to be pretty easy.
So if the SPPs get easier, I really hope that doesn't apply to the other trials. Like I feel like everything since Moon has been stupid easy. So Stag, like Moose Kai was again really easy.
Stag is a stupid trial.
Yeah, but I think our problem is that we've power crept it. Like we've power crept the normal trial curve in GL a bit more. So
think-
like Stag, I mean, like we have a lot more powerful units for many of the rules, especially for damage.
It's basically been a problem since Esther came out, actually, is that every new unit that's a damage dealer that's come out in global has basically, we've expected them to have global exclusive or global like buffs basically to keep up with the damage race.
Yeah, and I think the solution to that they tried to do previously and they kind of gave up was the mixed the not the mixed party trials, not the fixed party trial. What was the one like the egg and the lantern?
The
What did they
vengeful
call it?
trials.
Chamber of the Vengeance, Vengeful.
Yeah, I thought that was really cool because like it doesn't matter how good your first party is. It's basically saying you need to have 25 different units to beat it. To get the
50
And
now.
now 50, which is mind blowing, and I hate it a little bit, but I also appreciate the fact that it's there.
Yeah.
Yeah, but technically you can also just reuse 4 of your strongest units and slot in a random unit.
I've tried to do that. I brought like Charlotte, the same 2 damage dealers, and then kind of swap in the rest just to save some time and gear swapping. As you all know, I hate gear swapping and I avoid it at all costs.
Merc Ramza every trial.
Hey, I will say, I did use Merc Ramza to beat Iron Giant, the new one, the Scorn of the Iron Giant, by himself. He solo tanked it and did a fantastic job. So I don't know if that speaks to global power creep, or that these bosses are just not hard enough, or that Merc Ramza is invincible. One of the three.
Stubborn.
Or the fourth option, you have too much whales SDMRs.
There we go.
Mhm.
There we go.
That's the one.
So I really hope that they bring back more Chamber of the Vengeful. They kind of just stopped last year in the middle midway, and
They said they were coming out with them one every month or so, if I remember right.
yeah,
And that's definitely not been the case.
I mean, this is a little bit of a tinfoil hat theory. I think that somebody over at Gumi, who's responsible for global exclusive content, got sick over the holidays because we've had some weird shuffling around of things, and some stuff got delayed, and we like didn't get enhancements for Felix and Tiana. And I think that somebody was in charge of that stuff and got sick or fired or whatever, and they had to cut some stuff.
You know, that is a perfect segue into our next segment, which is the enhancements and latents that came out for the previous versions of our Chinese New Year units. Those include last year's units, which are Qin, and I can't pronounce the other one, the double unit.
And
Baihu.
Zhukui.
Baihu.
We'll call him Baihu for now, and then also Yoon and Chao and
Ang.
who's the other one? Ang, yes.
Ang.
So, Cotton, why don't you start us off with the most impressive of all the units, which is definitely not Chao, but let's start with Chao.
I feel a bit hurt by the sentence.
Get wrecked.
But it's still true. I'm sorry.
Yes, sad but true. The Child's latents really lean into his role as a healer, so his main enhancement is and let me just pull up his page.
The cooldown, I guess.
Wait, you don't have that page like bookmarked in any of your browsers?
Or like memorized by heart.
It's not your browser homepage.
Now his main enhancement is actually his saintly healing, because it really leans into his role as a tank and a healer. So with saintly healing, he would be able to have a full uptime on his heals while tanking. So and it gives him a very strong ability heal, so he's not reliant on using white magic Kiraja.
I actually agree. I think this saintly healing is probably the most effective thing you could do, because you might be able to forego a healer entirely just because of the next turn Kiraja level heals. And Chao is going to have high spirit anyway, so there shouldn't be any issue there.
My main issue with Chao is that he has his abilities split into 2 different W casts. Because Saintly Healing heals on the turn that you use it and the next turn, he can still provide healing every turn, even though he can't dual cast it with his cover. But it can get a little awkward and clunky, especially if he dies, because I'm pretty sure that if he dies, even if he gets re-raised, that that cancels the next turn autocast, right?
Yeah, it would, yeah.
Yeah. So it's not that you can't make him work, but I think it can be a headache and it can be fragile in a lot of cases.
But I do think it can be rewarding though, because if you pair him with the right team and you actually can compensate for the times he can't heal, you can get away with. Well, I mean, you can get away by slotting in finisher. I love finishers, so that's nice. But you can also just have more interesting comps where you don't have to bring a healer that spams Karaja every turn either.
Yeah, he definitely has potential. I just think that for a lot of people who are struggling with trials, he is maybe not the best choice, and there's other tanks that can do a lot more than he can. And
Although if people are lacking a like 7-star magic healer, it will be quite useful to
Yeah.
go for him, since you just only need 1 copy and you can get his prism from the trash shop. Compared to
One thing I did like that they did, although
compared to yeah.
sorry, one thing I did like that I wish they would have gone a little further on is we were talking a little bit in the Discord over the last before the Latents came out, that what Chow really needed was some general mitigation to kind of keep up with the other tanks, and one of the suggestions was maybe just make his limit burst last for 3 turns and have it be 54% mitigation, which is pretty, would be the highest number available. What they did instead was they had a cooldown, a 5-turn cooldown that you can use on turn 1, that you can also W cast with his cover, I believe. That provides a 30% mitigation. So it does have full uptime, but it is only 30%, and it's based on a cooldown.
There is an issue with Chow in that he's not really good at any of the 2 things that. So, as a healer, like our top tier healers like Lena or Aiden or Folka, they all have AoE re-raise, or they have immunes to certain types, certain status ailments. But Chow heals a lot, and he can cure status ailments, but he can't re-raise, and he can't provide immunity. So he's not really a great healer. On the other side of the tank spectrum, he can get tanky and he blocks magic damage, but it doesn't provide any mitigation or any sort of meaningful support buffs other than his cooldown ability, which is really good, like 200% defense in SPR, 30% mitigation maybe. But the thing is, like, because he's like in this section where he's trying to do both but not really good at the same time, I feel that the Latents, they did him dirty. Like I think they should have just doubled down on one of his features.
I mean, I don't really.
Minor side note, sorry. Chow does have ailment immunity for the party, but it's on it lasts 3 turns and it's not a 5-turn cooldown. So in practice, it's not very useful because you usually do that the whole time.
And the thing is, I think it's a bit narrow to look at Chow that way, because I mean, definitely he is not as good as the top tier magic tanks if you're struggling to clear content. But I still like the fact that he doesn't have to be as strong as a healer, and he doesn't have to be as strong as a tank, because he can let you slot in someone like, let's say, Regis to a much higher effect than you might have, or you might not even have been able to slot in Regis because your team was full with all the support you need for a trial. Whereas Chow will let you do that through swallowing a role, or swallowing the healer role from the support, kind of.
Honestly, Chow's Latents kind of remind me of back when White Knight Noel first got his enhancements, because I'm not sure how many people remember that, but
I remember.
White Knight Noel's enhancements focused a lot on making him into a better mage. Like, they did still have some stuff for his tanking kit, but there was a lot more in there that was about let's boost up his mage, let's give him stronger magic counters, let's boost his modifiers, and none of that mattered. And with Chow, it's not that bad because his healing kit is still relevant, and healer plus tank is a better combination than tank slash mage. But it still feels like they were too focused on making him different that they forgot to make him good.
And for all of you that don't know, like, White Knight Noel is Muspel's absolutely favorite unit, while Chow is Cotton's absolutely favorite unit. So I think we should have like a battle between Muspel and Cotton on who is the best tank.
I like Chow a lot. Chow was the only unit that I ever pulled for on the basis of his sprite. But I also realized that he's not that good anymore.
when
I mean,
compared
he
to White
still
Knight. No.
works. Like the way I see it, he works very well in dropping the healer of your team, in taking over the healer slot in your team comp, so you can slot in a support unit. Like a really good team would be Awakened Warrior of Light, who for provoke tanking and barriers, and some heals. Chow for magic tanking and even more heals, and you can bring someone like Ignis who can easily cover the mitigation, status ailment resistance, and element resistance.
I don't.
I feel like at that point you'd be better using like Fid plus Awakened Warrior of Light plus
There we
Ignis
go.
plus
There we go.
some magic cover tank. Because Fid and AWOL can already cover healing on their own. You don't really need Chow for that. I mean, again, I'm not saying that Chow is bad. It's just he's really not. He's not as good as the best tanks.
Good.
He's not a good boy. I think Chow.
You take that
Well,
back.
compared to Charlotte, at least he doesn't spend 5 minutes every turn just countering.
Well, okay, there's that.
That's
actually
underrated.
true. That's
That's
actually
underrated.
true.
True. Like
Speedrun strats.
the thing about Chow is that like he works. You're right. He just works, but so does Furion. I say Furion works all the time, but nobody ever listens. So like, I mean,
That's because
do
you're
you-
wrong.
It seems like
Furion,
Gumi-
like, is that a unit even?
oi, mate, don't look down on Furion.
I think Gumi tends to make units that are kind of all-purpose that are good for almost every fight, and then there's other units that have, like for Rivera, for example, that with specific team comps can really shine, but may not be effective for all content or all team types. And I think Chow and even White Knight Noel in some cases can fall into that category where, as you said, if you can replace a healer slot completely with Chow, or if you're double tanking and you're kind of tight on your team composition, there may be some extra benefit for you there, but it's not like you'd be slotting in Chow in every single fight just because he's lacking a few different things in that kit.
Oi!
All right, let's talk about a different unit that actually got a good hand latents this time around. Let's talk about Aang. Because
So what did you like that Aang got?
well, I thought Aang really got nice latents for what it is. His new cooldown ability is really strong. I just wish that it was not a shorter cooldown, but I wish he got one more cooldown ability where like Awaken Rain. Oh no, sorry, Aldor King Rain, where they can switch interchange their cooldown abilities to refill their LBs every turn. I think that would have been really cool, but that didn't
I mean,
happen.
he's got it quite good already. He can pull off like 2 limit breaks in 5 turns.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But
you can use steady bow for one.
Meta. I don't expect latents or enhancements to bring old damage dealers back to top tier. But for a unit that's a couple of years old, Aang is pretty strong. He doesn't burst quite as hard as Sid, but he's not that hard to gear and might actually outdamage Sid against some enemy types when his killers apply. Although I will say that Aang's killers are not for very relevant enemy types. And the fact that he's an AoE finisher can be pretty relevant, which is something that Sid just can't do, and is kind of rare in general. There aren't many AoE finishers.
And the other fact is that I don't think Sid should be the par on which we compare finishers to.
That's true.
Yeah, true.
Well, I think Sid should be the par, but Gumi doesn't seem to think so, and they seem to think that Sid was a mistake, and they keep giving us finishers that aren't as good as him. So,
But I mean, he technically is a mistake. He does far too much damage. Like, as is, especially if you can gear him really well. I mean, it's true, though. He does too much damage. It's not a normal amount of damage.
I think,
are you saying that Gumi is bad at balancing the game?
and I don't
Or
think this was
Alim.
even Gumi's fault. This was Alim's fault, right? Like because
was
Yeah.
it though? Because like,
Sid
but
as
didn't
a
Gumi
unit-
give our Sid? But our Sid has like the 3-turn rotation, which also makes him incredibly good at just being a damage dealer,
but I think
and
there was
not just a burster.
there was a general switch in JP, if I remember, like, and this might be wrong, is that when Sid enhancements came out in JP, Alim realized their mistake and they didn't really release Dragoons for like a whole year until I think Fang or something, or maybe. But it's
Yeah,
like,
no. Like, I'm 100% sure Alim just had no idea you could actually true dual wield Sid and break shit. and then they were like, "Oh shit!" You
And that
can
was
actually
after they
wear
fixed the jumping, right? After they fixed jump, like where you could choose when to hand down. So I think that's when they realized, oh, people could abuse this by you giving him true dual wield. So I think Sid shouldn't be like Sid is a clear mistake in this game.
Although like JP enhancements still have him at ridiculous levels of damage. So
For the
or
record,
just
the main change was that in Japan, his cooldown that upgrades his jump is 4 turns instead of 3.
exactly.
Yeah. So he still did the ridiculous burst that he does in this game, in our game.
Yeah, he's just even better in GL.
Yeah.
His rotation's perfect in GL, and it wasn't quite as good in JP.
Yeah, and JP just had 1 turn where he sat on the ground and did nothing relevant.
So I really like that we're nerding out about Sid right now.
So
But I
back
think
to Aang.
Yeah, Aang shouldn't be compared to Sid. I think Aang, if anything, should be compared to like Crown Prince Noctis or Regina. But even Regina is
Regina?
Probably not.
Okay,
Probably not
Not
Regina.
really the
can we
Yeah,
get
have to
another
talk about
segment
that one.
called How to Pronounce Names?
Oh, we actually did that in
we
the
did that last
pilot
time.
episode.
Yeah, I'm gonna say
I think we
we're
might
gonna
need
have to
another entire
focus on
bonus episode
Regina.
because it's Regina.
It's Regina.
It's not. It's
It is
Regina.
not
It's
Regina.
Regina. Let's just stick with Regina for now, okay?
For all the children that are listening to this, it's Regina.
Yes.
Oh my goodness.
Like, okay, I'm looking it up right now.
No, it's no discussion, please.
It's Regina. There's. Oh my god.
There is a city called Regina.
No,
No,
listen,
no.
listen.
So
The most usual pronunciation is Regina. Okay,
there we go.
it comes. Okay, so it's a Quora answer, so I don't know how valid it is, but like that's all I have.
This is the worst.
All right,
thing
then
ever
let's do
happened.
this. Let's just never mention that name again and move on.
Yeah, it's a shit
But-
unit
but-
anyways.
But I do want to say I don't think it's a valid comparison because the thing about both Regina and Noctis is their interesting rotation where they chain with their limit bursts on 1 turn and then they have to have support chains on the other. Aang is not quite like that though.
I guess, yeah, Aang is more traditional in his
Yeah,
finishing.
he's more like a so he is a good comparison to Sid, but bad because Sid is broken.
Aang can do 1 burst and then he can do a smaller burst on the next turn, which Sid cannot do. So if the boss has like an HP lock at a low percent and then you need to finish them off on the next turn, that could make Aang better, or obviously if you need the AoE damage. I think that Aang is probably overall a bit worse than Sid for most situations, but he does have a niche and he's even if you have both, I think you would use Aang sometimes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Of
Aang, I
course.
mean, Aang is great.
I
So
mean,
let's
Sid is
move on
just
to
so
Yoon.
broken.
Yeah, Sid is still
Sorry.
broken. That's the way it is. But let's move on to Yoon. I think Yoon's kit was pretty simple. He just basically needed to do a lot more damage, which I think they accomplished with the things that they added. But otherwise, I feel like what is it? Not backdrops. What word am I looking for? The detriments. What word am I looking for?
Downfall.
Drawbacks?
Drawbacks. Yeah, the drawbacks to Yoon is he's a little harder to gear because he can only dual wield a certain select few types of equipment.
You don't understand. That's a good thing. It means that the builder builds him faster. It's
That's
speedrun spread.
that's true. Thank you, Learguard, once again for your amazing thing.
I feel like Yoon's downside is also if you don't have his STMR, you have to equip his shit TMR on him.
Actually, if for certain builds, you can just forgo his TMR.
He does have a high enough attack passives, and he is. I have him without his TMR, and I don't have his STMR, and it actually does a little bit higher attack without it.
But you're
based
losing
on
on a 50% TDW, aren't you?
Well, you have to replace it somehow. I have 2 Ravenhearts, so I don't have that problem. And I also have, if you have like a Radiant Lightning TMR, that helps a lot.
Right.
Just occurred to me. Has anybody tried him with Jiraiya's TM?
No.
I've heard,
No.
I have not tried it yet, but I imagine if you are wanting to build for more defensive stats, I think the Katana route with Jiraiya's TMR is a good option, because if you have something, if you have some of the Katana STMRs, or if you want to use like Dragoon's Wisdom, you can kind of beef him up a little bit.
I feel like.
It's-
Sorry, go ahead.
I was just saying katanas are a little easier to find materia for
Mm-hmm.
than like maces and the other stuff that he equips, daggers.
If you look at his equipable equipments, like all of them are basically the 4 types of weapons that we all just don't use, frequently.
I will
And I
argue
feel
that
like-
fists are very good. Tiger fist is beautiful.
Well, TDW fists, like how often do we use those? And then a mace, a TDW mace, a TDW whip, daggers maybe. So it's
Yeah,
like his
I think what
equipment
you really
selection-
want to do is daggers and fists if you have them, because those are, I think, the most plentiful. And specifically, you really want to have Nyx's STMR for the fire
Yes.
imbue or for the fire damage.
Yeah, as someone with like 4 Tifa STMRs, I feel like we have a ton of TDW fists going around.
I feel like Yoon also has an issue with his like squishiness. He's actually not that tanky for current standards, I think. I don't know if that's just me thinking that. But
I've got him with about 12 or 13k health, but his spirit is definitely lacking. So that's something to watch out for. The other problem that he has is he doesn't have a ton of utility outside of his damage. And so if you're someone who's looking to invest EP into his latents or looking to invest into his enhancements, he may not be as great of an investment to you for the longevity purposes, and he doesn't really have a lot of utility. So
Yeah, and I just realized something that makes me kind of think that I actually think that Aang or especially Yoon should have actually gotten really, really good latents and enhancements, because the only people that are going to have them before the enhancements are going to be people that played, when did they come out? 3 years ago, right? Like Yoon is the first Chinese New Year unit, right?
Right.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah. So obviously, like that should have. I feel they should have rewarded that. Yes, there's a banner now where you can get them, but it's a terrible banner because it's like what, 7 rainbows on it or something.
Hold up,
No,
hold up,
actually
hold
no.
up.
The banner is actually really good. There's
Yeah,
five.
okay,
It's a
okay. But I mean,
5%
like, if
rainbow
you're
rate.
aiming for Yoon, I mean, like, if you're aiming for a specific one, it's not a great
Hold
banner.
on.
No, it's the
hold on.
same.
1%
It
free.
is the same. There's
It's
No,
5 rainbows on the banner. It's a 5% rainbow rate, and you only can get banner rainbow. So it's a 1% chance to get any of the units.
Oh, really? Oh, okay.
And
Oh, you
yeah.
have to even
you have to realize if
plus you get a guaranteed rainbow with every second.
And it's only
10+1 pull if you're doing the
7K.
step up.
And
Okay,
the
that's
Trust
cool,
Coin Shop has his prism. So it's like you don't. It's not like you need to pull for 2. If you're now pulling for Yoon, you'll need to pull for 1. And this is just another thing, but it might be a bit out of topic. But I think the 7K banners, this one and the last Christmas one, are probably like one of the best value per banners we've had in a while, because it's only 7,000. 90% of the units in the pool are great. Like the worst unit in this pool is Chow.
and he's still
Ouch.
pretty great. He's still a great tank, though. I mean, like, there's really
Yeah,
no.
Yeah.
There's no doubt.
I don't know if I agree. If Chow
I think
is
the worst might be Baihu.
I think Baihu
Yeah,
is
it's-
getting a bit of bad rep, but anyways, Baihu or Chow are probably the worst units, but even then, they're still really good. Like at worst, they're still really, really good.
You know what's
So-
funny is I'm actually kind of questioning Gumi's logic here, because I feel like for the last several holiday unit banners, the old banner has been far better to pull on than the new
Exactly.
banner. Like the Felix and Tiana banner were awful. And even the Lilith and Lucius banner was terrible. The only reason people pulled for Lilith is because they're awful people and want to use her in arena.
Lilith is literally the worst thing in the game.
I found the 2 people that actually play arena. So
I have so many.
It's free stuff. Arena's free stuff, so I play it.
I think we can,
It's swimming in
if we've
pots.
talked about Yoon, we can talk about Baihu next. Because I
Yeah,
think-
tell us why the enhancements are so terrible.
So they're not terrible, but Baihu is basically a worse version of Xuan. So
I agree.
there's 2 ways to build them, but really there's only one way. You can go for an SPR build, but it's pretty crap. The physical damage build is better, and if you can get them a big external impair, like 100%, they actually do fairly competitive damage. But at that point, you're providing external support for a unit that still isn't top tier, but they are pretty tanky, which is nice. And they're not bad, but I think they're probably the weakest of the units on the old banner, because Aang is probably the second or third best finisher in the game, depending on how you feel about capping nearly every turn with Crown Prince Noctis. And Chao is a fairly good magic tank, not the best, but he works and he can provide roll compression. Chin is, we'll talk about him later, but he's good. And then Baihu is just, I mean, damage dealers are a dime a dozen, especially chainers, and he's not special.
That's why I feel like damage dealers, especially limited time ones, are kind of doomed from the start, especially when you put them on a banner. Like if you're going to put them on a limited time banner, make it so that you can only get banner rainbows, because otherwise people aren't going to pull for that unit. And then you run into this thing where no one has the unit and it doesn't chain with anyone else, and it's kind of pointless at that point.
They did do that.
The number of people who went for the Halloween and the
I mean, when they first came out, though.
Differ.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, when they first released Baihu and Chin, that was not the case.
Yeah,
and I still think that like it's a limited unit. I'm perfectly okay with limited units being quite powerful because they are limited and they're not going to be around for so much. So
I think Baihu's also big downfall is that he's a DR chainer. How many triple casting or he TT cast, right? Or quad cast?
He has
they, but I would say
he cap.
Okay,
they cap their own skills with a thing. I think they chain okay with TCAS DR, but a limited unit
they
with not
basically
top
do
tier
their own
damage
thing.
who doesn't work quite perfectly with a non-dupe is just the worst of all possible worlds.
That's really his biggest downside, I think, because DR isn't as popular as it used to be.
And for that reason, I think actually Yoon is going to have a little bit more longevity because Yoon's got a Mirror of Equity, Absolute Mirror of Equity frames, and also Bolting Strike frames, which are both really easy to do.
Bolting Strike is likely to be more relevant. From what we've seen of JP, dual cast AT frames is not a thing that's going to be
it's usually T casting.
I mean,
triple cast AT.
There's always the chance of Gumi throwing us a global exclusive curveball on this kind of thing, but we never really know with that.
So I the thing about Baihu that I like generally is that their ability to, I guess, they're flexible in their equipments, right? They can equip a lot of different useful things, and they can also go SPR. Technically, if you want to go a really tanky SPR route, they can do it. It's just objectively worse than the attack route.
Yeah, but I would say that is the big draw of them, though. Like you gear them tanky as hell.
Yeah, exactly.
Survive, because like the attack or even the attack build, it's okay, but it's again nothing you'd want to specifically pull them for.
Attack build has around, I think it was 1400 SPR even without STMRs when I was calculating the damage, which is that's really high for a damage deal.
That's really good.
It's not Xuan, which is just high by any standard even for a tank.
I don't think Xuan should ever be a standard, but yeah.
I hope not.
So
could you imagine if they made a fight where you had to have a damage dealer as tanky as Xuan?
God, no.
Oh God,
no, it's easy because then you just bring you can just bring 2 Gladio instead, so it's fine.
Just bring Aloha Lastwell.
Huh.
Dodge Aloha Lastwell.
Aloha Lastwell has really, really bad spirit.
If it's an all physical fight, you can just bring 2 Assassin Shadow and.
Why are you bringing someone with high spirit to an all physical fight, bro? Like, why?
No, I'm saying if it's all physical, you bring Assassin Shadow and you can use your AoE Mirage and just build them for 100% evasion anyway, or have them hide. Yeah. So let's talk about Chin, the last one that got their enhancements. So Muscle, you said he's pretty good. What was it that he needed?
Chin needed his entire kit to be removed and changed into something else, and they did that.
Chin,
that's kind of how I felt.
But it's true. I mean, it's true.
Dude, Chin isn't just good. He's just great now. I don't know how they did this.
I think I'm not entirely decided on whether the most improved unit on the banner is Yun or Chin, because Yun was really bad before his lateness relative to the current meta. But at least Yun's kit was coherent. Chin's kit before his enhancements was designed by a drunken chimpanzee, and I don't want to think about it anymore.
I feel this way about a lot of units, actually. I feel like the person that creates the units and releases them first is terrible at their jobs, and then enhancement guy comes in and has to fix everything and does a good job at it.
But I
Enhancement
think you're
guy
a bit unfair.
deserves a raise.
Oh, I absolutely agree on that. But I also disagree because I actually think like they had an idea with Chin. Like whoever designed Chin first had an idea. They were just really terrible at math and understanding the game mechanics. But they tried to do something a bit different though. Because Kin was kind of this bard that was supposed to be buffing your party, but also doing auto cast damage on the next turn. So you could actually run like Kin as a damage dealer-ish. It just didn't work, unfortunately.
I think Chin was supposed to be Elephant Light. Like whoever saw Elephant and JP at Gumi were like, "Oh, we want this in GL. Let's make her let's make Chin him," and like they tried it and it didn't really work out.
They forgot that Elephant in enhancements made her like lose the song.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not really a new thing for us to have units that are designed to be similar to a unit that Gumi knows is good, but without them really understanding why that unit was good. Like Lucius, when he was originally released, was, I think at the time I'd said that he was Queen as designed by somebody who didn't understand why Queen was good. This was back when Queen was good, which she was for a brief period of time. Because he had like the crisis attack buffs that made him really strong.
Yeah.
But he didn't have a way to trigger them. And he didn't have good frames or good modifiers or anything else that made any sense.
100%.
One thing that I especially like about Chin and his or about his latents is the fact that he actually gives chaining abilities to your entire party, and I love using finishers. So like, this is so amazing.
Yeah, Chin has become kind of like, well, not a requirement, but like a really big recommendation if you want to fit a finisher into your party, because he just allows for finishers to exist in a vacuum at least.
I mean, like he's like Fid in that regard, where Fid also makes it very easy, but I feel like he makes it even easier.
Because you have to realize it's Fid might not have downturns to do that versus Chin. Chin will definitely do this while doing his thing. For Fid to give out those training abilities, they need to be able to, do that plus break/heal. But Chin gives out the chaining abilities while doing his main thing, which is buffing.
That's nice. I mean, in reality, Fid really doesn't struggle. She
Right,
can actually do it. And one really big important thing is that Fid also has all of her imperils, which are amazing. I don't know if Chin has any imperils at all. Actually,
Chin imperils all elements by 70%.
70%. Okay, yeah. But
So
that's still good though.
Fid has 75% on demand for 5 elements and can go up to 100% with her cooldown upgrade thingamabob.
Yeah.
So would you say that Chin is probably the biggest win out of these 5 units that were enhanced?
I think so. I think
Hands down.
So the way that you use Chin, in my opinion, is that in a normal team comp, you're probably running a tank, a healer, a dedicated breaker, and 2 chainers, and then the last slot is going to go to either a buffer or a second tank, depending on the fight. So the thing with Chin is he's a breaker he's not as good at it as the best breakers, but he also provides buffs, big defense and spirit buffs, and he can also buff mitigation by 40%, and he can buff all elemental resist by 70%, and maybe there's something else too I'm forgetting off the top of my head. But basically, by running him as your breaker, you still have buffs, and then you can also fit in a second tank, and that can make some really safe team comps.
And I think someone did the math of looking at, so he has 65% breaks, and if you look at his, if you add to the fact that he's also buffing all your stats by 200%, you're still getting up to like as if you had 70% breaks. If I don't misremember, I think someone posted it.
Yeah, it's
But isn't
pretty
that more for Fu?
Well, Fu has an issue in general, I think, because Fu can't do it as well as Chin can.
I don't necessarily agree with that. I think that for players who have a pretty bad roster, Chin is better because he provides general mitigation, it's so important to have high general mitigation. And
Right.
there aren't a whole lot of units that can do it at 40 or 50%. So if you don't have one of those units, Chin is a lot better. If you do, I think Fu is way better, because if you already have that source of general mitigation, then the fact that Fu provides typed mitigation that can stack on top of that general mit can be a huge help.
Question for you guys.
Mhm.
And actually, Barros, I think you said you like finishers. You've only told us like a dozen times so far in the podcast.
So I really like finishers. Thank you for asking, Hazard.
But would Chin provide the available team comp of having a healer, 2 tanks, Chin, as well as another either support or breaker, and then be able to slot in a finisher because Chin is providing AoE party chaining abilities?
I mean, first, I'd want to slot 2 finishers into the team.
Why not 3? 6
No,
finishers.
no. But in general, that's kind of what you want to do, because a single finisher, I mean, it's a safer strat to do a single finisher because you can slot more supports, obviously. But if you just want to do damage, you slot in 2 finishers, like 2 Sids, and then you just destroy everything that
I think
moves.
at that point you might use like Sylvie plus Bosch or AI Katie, or Bosch or Barrel. If you have AI Katie, you don't need Sylvie. And then somebody else to provide more support chains, and then you can slot in 2 finishers or something.
Well, I'm just thinking of like the turtliest, team comp of 1 finisher, but Chin being able to provide the fact that enough roll compression where you can actually slot in 2 tanks and a support and a healer and still be able to provide the chaining support for a finisher.
You mean and a dedicated breaker, because that's only
Yes, and a dedicated breaker as well.
I just want to say something. I know, so there's this meme for everyone listening. There's this meme in the Wiki Ratings channel that kind of goes like, so help me out. It's Sylvie, Tsuki's TMR, and Fire Whip, right? And
No, we are not going there.
no, but I actually just wanted to say that I actually used for chaining support. It was for Iron Giant, I think, where I actually used
that stuff is completely reasonable for
Spooky
chaining
Close
support.
here,
The,
Taskmaster.
the joke was about using it to damage me.
No, I know. I just wanted to say I actually did use it. So it's like chaining support is not really that relevant because we actually have Sylvie and Tsuki's TMR.
Okay, but I still think that, like, you know how Sylvie has to waste a move in a turn to give out the set chaining support, but Chin does it while he's doing other things. Like, he can be breaking and he also gives out a chaining support. Or he could
and not just chaining support. I mean, his abilities also give you any of the chaining families you might need. So, like, oh, you have Charlotte. Okay, nice. So you just do the AR ability, and then Charlotte can chain. Well, technically, you're giving it to everyone, so it doesn't matter. But you can still choose the chain, which I think is pretty powerful.
Have you guys seen people clear Moon with Chin, like 2 Chins, and using Chin as a mag DPS and the buffer, and like there's a level of flexibility with Chin because he. So I tried gearing him with just my regular TMRs, and he's at like 18k HP with no pots. Like, he's stupid tanky. His TMR is tank. It gives him a lot of HP, and he in and of itself has a lot of HP passives. He actually does decent magic damage, I guess, if you gear him for it, and he does all the support things. So I think this is me taking my hot takes, but I think he's probably the best support in the game right now.
I wouldn't go that far, maybe.
Beating out Ignis,
No.
beating out Regis, beating out Lunafreya.
We could probably have a whole podcast discussion on different support units and how they compare to each other and that kind of thing.
I mean, okay, but since you went down this road, Shadow, since you went down this road,
and we're out of time.
The thing about Kin, okay, calm the fuck down. No, but okay. Here's the thing about Kin. Kin does so many things. He does, but again, he's not really like super excelling at any of them, because like you look at Lunafreya, she's going to bring so much more survival to your team. You look at Regis spamming those barriers. You look at Ignis if you need that 15% mitigation. So like Kin doesn't do this though. Kin is really strong, but he's not going to help you beat the hardest trials in the game. That's not Kin.
Chin allows you to take a finisher.
And I keep saying Kin. I don't know why. Sorry.
Chin allows you to take
I think that Chin he's very useful if you're trying to do speed kills or showing off, and he's also useful for new players who don't have somebody with high mitigation. For other people, he's maybe not as useful because he's not very specialized, and you don't really want to or need to run finishers unless you're trying to do a
Until-
speed kill.
Until, of course, the Dark Visions event, which is going to come out soon here, where
That's
you
my
do
other
need
point.
external chains to help you. You do
Yeah,
need
but-
external chains because you'll be bringing finishers.
That is true.
Chin
But
is
you don't-
actually
You
very
don't need
well
you don't
suited
necessarily
for
need
Dark
Chin to do that. You can just a bunch of units have support chains, and you can just kind of use a macro to slot them into whatever chains you happen to have. Like you could use Steakheart's AR chain and somehow smash that into a triple cast Stardust Ray chain. I think that works. I don't know. I would have to double check on.
Yeah, or you know,
Probably
like
not.
Sylvie, Tsuki, TMR, etc.
Fire
I
whip.
hate you so much.
But it is true though. It's actually really powerful.
So let's now that we've talked about all these different units, I kind of wanted to move into the last segment, which is, since we have kind of the faces of both the wiki ratings and the tier ratings people here, just kind of introduce. I guess the reason I want to do this is because there's kind of a lot of controversy when you're rating any units, because it's not a really exact science, and there's a lot of different factors that go into it, and also people value different things. So the wiki ratings and the tier ratings kind of value different things. So I wanted to give both Muscle and Shadow Walker a chance to kind of talk about the assumptions that each of their discussions kind of make, and the things that go into those ratings. So Muscle, do you want to kind of talk about the wiki ratings real quick and
Sure.
address those things?
So some of this is going to be redundant for people that read the update threads a lot, because I talk about this periodically. But basically, the idea behind the wiki ratings is we're aiming them at casual players, which I tend to think of that as the kind of player who doesn't really follow the community much, doesn't really plan out their pulls. They probably pull for whatever unit looks cool. And as a result, they might have a lot of damage dealers, but maybe they have really shitty tanks or healers or supports. And they end up needing to make do with what they have whenever they're trying to tackle a trial. So in that situation, a unit who has second rate or third rate support for something, that's, even if there are a lot stronger options, that can be really strong. So like for a veteran who really knows what they're doing, I think Fu is a lot better than Chin. But for a casual player that we're aiming the ratings at, I think that Chin is better because of the general mitigation. The other thing to talk about is the gear limitations. We don't allow limited gear. Part of this is because sometimes you get really specific items, sometimes they're really old items that can really make a difference, and we don't want to assume that everyone has those. For instance, before the bomb family trial came out, there was one two-handed axe, and it came from an event that I think it was like 2 years ago. And we didn't assume that Ignacio had that when we were doing his damage, just because frankly, a lot of players don't have that axe, and it makes a big difference if you don't have it. But the more important thing that affects is passive provoke gear. There's only one non-limited passive provoke item in the game, and that's Iris's TM, and it's not enough to get most tanks up to 100% passive provoke. So if a unit doesn't have at least 70% passive draw, that means that they can't reach 100% passive draw with our gearing limitations. And the reason that we do that is, again, I don't want it to be a situation where players are in a make or break state based on when they started playing or when Gumi decided to hand out a certain event item.
That's something I think is really important to explain, because I know I'm also someone who contributes a lot to the wiki ratings discussions. This doesn't mean that if the unit is rated lower than another unit, for example, a really recent controversy was Awakened Warrior of Light versus Galuf, right? And because Galuf has 100% uptime on his mitigation, and he also has a really easy time getting past the provoke, all these different things kind of factored into gearing towards the casual player. Galuf was really useful for those things. Whereas Warrior of Light, even though he's a better unit in many ways, lacked those certain things, and under the wiki rating parameters, would receive a lower rating. But I think people kind of miss the point, and they just think, oh, you think my unit is not as good as this other unit, and you're wrong. That's not really how it works. You have to kind of approach it from, are you a casual player? Are you someone this ratings is geared towards. And if not, then you kind of have to take that grain of salt and say, okay, well, my team comp might be different, my situation might be different, and I could get a lot more mileage out of this unit because I have, let's say, the Moogle charm that provides 50% passive provoke.
Yeah, I think you can't make a set of ratings that will perfectly fit every single person's individual scenario. So you kind of have to, no matter what you're doing, you have to pick some kind of general guideline and go for that and realize, yeah, it's not going to be perfect for everyone, but you can try to get something that's probably as close to possible to correct for as many people as possible.
And I mean, like, to me, it's all about probabilities, because as a casual player, it's much more probable that Galuf is going to be a lot more useful for their shitty units than Awakened Warrior of Light, which will need some extra pieces to be that awesome tank that he can be, right?
Definitely.
I
The
agree.
main thing with Awakened Warrior of Light, this is something that I talked about back when I wrote the ratings update thread, but he can't maintain 50% general mitigation on his own, and that's such an important thing as you get into end game trials. It's not absolutely necessary, but it helps so much. And if you don't have it from if you have Galoof, then you have that 100%. If you have Awakened Warrior of Light, you might not, especially if you're the kind of casual player that we're talking about who hasn't really planned out. Maybe they didn't pull for Charlotte or Lucas or whoever else has 50% general mitigation.
Or
And
you woke up really early and decided to do the bomb trial without any preparation.
Or you're some kind of idiot who woke up really early and decided to do the bomb trial without any preparation.
I'm just impressed Moosepel is actually doing trials. Is anyone else?
I'm
Yeah,
impressed
for
that he's
the-
actually doing trials on release. Well, close to
Like-
release.
Yeah, exactly. Like this is really close to release. I don't know what's happening.
Yeah, for the longest time, the whole meme was that the person running the thing didn't even do trials.
I think he got tired of us making fun of him, so he finally decided to catch up and spend a weekend.
Catching up.
I just felt like I had to flex about how good AI Katie is.
There it is, back to the bias of his own.
Yeah,
unit.
her STMR is really, really good. I'm so sad I didn't pull for her.
Just a word on that. Please don't put it on your friend units anymore. Please don't put it on your friend units. It takes up so much time auto casting every turn.
So
So
you're
tired
saying
of
that
it.
you don't want AI Katie's STMR, instead you want Delita's and Silka's. Delita's STMR and Silka's
Oh, actually,
DM.
Xenochris just put together an Emperor Fu unit with, I think, 10 total auto casts. I have to test it out and see how long it takes to be able to actually use your unit on any given turn. So let's move on with Shadow, because I know Musple, you were saying it's kind of hard to you have to assume certain things, and it's not going to be perfect. So Shadow Walker, I know that you and a bunch of other people decided to kind of take a different tack on your approach. So can you describe that approach for me?
Unlike the wiki tier list, we don't make any gear assumptions, period, because we're mostly rating the units, and we're not rating any DPS units. That's not. But we're rating the units in a particular set. I guess best potential type of deal. Like, what can you do if you have this unit in your best possible scenario? And that's why both Galuf and Awakened Warrior of Wall are in the same. Awakened Warrior of Light are actually in the same tier, because they're all S tier. And just going back, actually, I should explain this first. But going back, our tier list is basically S, A, B, and that's it. And if you're on the tier list, that unit is already really good, because we're only rating units that are worth your time, worth investing your time. Meanwhile, the wiki rating has to rate trash units like Delita or things like
Noctis.
original Ramza. Noctis. Oh, whoa. Original
Whoa,
Noctis,
whoa,
like,
whoa! Calm
No,
down.
original Noctis.
original Noctis.
Oh, okay, okay.
Like, and even this week, technically, some of the, like, I don't think Chow is probably worth rating. Re-rating at least. So
Cotton, are you gonna allow him to talk like that? Like, are
But-
you
Oh
listening?
no, he and I will have a lot of words later.
but our ratings are only looking at units that are literally worth investing or worth your time, and we're just putting it in a great, good, okay tier list, and that's it. That's all we're looking. We don't care about damage DPS, because DPS is a dime a dozen I think most people are smart enough to figure out how to use DPSs and what DPSs are good. But we're only rating supports. And one of the recent problems we've run into is actually buffers, because buffers are becoming a dime a dozen as well. Like we're getting a new buffer every week, especially with latents and stuff like that too.
I think one of the problems we run into with buffers specifically is that a lot of units that are tanks or breakers are now getting support skills that
Right.
are sometimes overlapping with buffers. And I think part of that is the idea that using 2 tanks in a fight is sometimes more necessary for newer players, especially. And so you want a unit role that can kind of have some overlap with other units. And so I think buffers are kind of the first person that gets kicked out of the team.
And
But lately they're really designing buffers to kind of have this other role, so they can do some compression. You rarely see pure buffers nowadays.
I know now it's revenge of the buffers, right?
yeah, like Shin
Gumi
is a good one.
figured out that the best way to make a good buffer is to make a breaker, and then you give them buffs.
Which really should have done in the first place, but they don't always plan ahead, and this is a game created without thought.
Yeah, I mean, as long as they do role compression, a buffer can always be relevant in certain situations. And as Muspel said, if they do role compression with a breaker buffer, then yeah, that unit is going to be great.
Well, one of the things about role compression is that I think recently that I realized people love Sylvie, and they say Sylvie's best thing is that she compresses roles. But the way that Sylvie compresses her roles is that she compresses things that a healer and a tank already does so well. You don't need another buffer to do. Like Sylvie does a lot of things, but you need to compress specific things. You can't just compress everything. You need to compress specific things that a tank and a healer can't do, and that's what makes the support valuable, I think.
I mean, technically, like breakers are really, really efficient at kind of compressing into another unit, because it always hurts me a bit when I have to bring a breaker just for the breaking, because it's kind of like a wasted slot. I have to have this unit in my team in order to not die from every attack the trial will throw at me. But the unit itself doesn't bring a lot of value unless the unit is fid. But yeah.
Which is why like the highest rank breakers are those with really, really strong breaks and who also bring some utility.
Yeah, exactly.
Like Locks, Mirages have been really useful for the last few trials.
Yeah, and that's why we rated Locke, Kryla, and what's the other one? Fid as S tier, when even though Edgar has bigger breaks, he doesn't have any other utility going for him. And that's why he's an A tier with Machina and Lid.
And I'm sure everyone has been really agreeable to that solution.
Everyone knows that anytime you say that a unit is better than another unit, it's not controversial at all. People will really listen to your reasoning, and you'll be able to they'll come around to your way of thinking, and they won't yell at you or send you hurtful PMs.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And
Exactly.
Yeah. That's
And
exactly how the world works.
And they'll definitely read all the assumptions and all the logical explanation and be like, oh, okay, so that's why, and be understanding.
Exactly.
Yes, and that is why Chao is the best magic tank.
See,
That's
we've
not how this
solved
works, Cotton.
all of the world's problems with this.
Yeah, but the tier list and the wiki tier list are existing separately, but at the same time they can coexist because they're different uses for different parameters.
Yeah, I think they've got different audiences. Where Shadow Walkers, you've got kind of highest potential. They're you have these drawbacks, but if you can overcome these drawbacks, here's their ultimate potential. Whereas the wiki ratings are, hey, we kind of assume you don't have the best stuff, and you kind of take that into account. So I really appreciate the work you guys do and the community does. I know it's not just you two; you guys are just kind of the face of the operation, but I know there's plenty of people that contribute to both. I being one of them. I don't know how I have time for all this, but I really appreciate the work you guys do, and the community as a whole has made this game so much more enjoyable for me. I know I can attest to that, and I'm sure you guys can say the same.
Absolutely.
So make sure when you leave your comments, sandwich it with a little love, right? And don't just hate on us all the time. I have a feeling that even this podcast will become a source of ire if we say something that someone doesn't like. So, but please feel free to leave your comments.
Yeah, wait, what was it
rating.
Shadow said? He said Chao is not worth rating?
Well,
Yes.
okay, we put
Yes,
Chao
he
at A,
did.
okay, but I'm just saying that his latents aren't worth a re-rate at all. He's just
Hmm.
fine where he is.
I feel like
Yeah.
you're just digging like
Yeah,
deeper and deeper.
We're just creating content for the next podcast, right?
Yes,
Oh no,
yes.
he is just asking for
And-
a mute.
And speaking of the next podcast, I want to say that I'm happy to announce we've been able to line up a guest, and it's going to be Ariana Grande, and we're going to talk about her collab. So
Mhm.
look forward to that next episode.
I'm
Exactly.
definitely looking forward to talking to Miss Grande. Like,
Oh man, if we ever get that far, we're in trouble.
One of us needs to quit our day job.
But I will say that,
Yeah.
that the goal of the podcast is to not only kind of keep the community updated on the weekly news and things that are coming up, but also to highlight some of the contributors that we do have in the community that may not get their voice heard all the time, especially ones that are in the background doing work on the wiki, or Learguard, for example, doing work on FFBE Equip. These things that really make the game run smoothly, because if we had to rely on Gumi to provide us all the information, this game would have been dead a long time ago.
But the
Imagine
official
trying to-
sources of information are so thorough.
Yeah. Imagine trying all the trials without the wiki. Good luck.
yeah, absolutely.
Mhm.
Maybe it's worth also mentioning that kind of our goal is also to try to bring these personalities into the podcast and showcase them to the rest of the world, or like the rest of the world in this case being the two people that will actually listen to this episode.
Exactly.
Thank you guys for listening to the Global Exclusive Podcast with our hosts Hazard, Baros, Kotzi, Muspel, Shadowwalker, and Dreamblitz. Next week we'll be discussing more news, more gaffes by Gumi, including probably the enhancements that got released unexpectedly and unintentionally, as well as we might have some special guests for you. So if you have comments on who you'd like to see as a special guest, let us know in the comments. And also, if you have any angry things you'd like to say to Muspel or Shadowwalker regarding their ratings, please PM them directly, and they'll be happy to assist you in any way they can. Until next week, thanks for listening to Global Exclusive Podcast, and keep playing FFBE. Thanks.
Keep macroing FFBE.
You're still macroing? Like, what year is it? 2018?
You mean
Alright.
people don't? You mean people actually don't play on emulators? Who even plays on their phones?
I actually play on my phone. I stopped playing on emulators in like 2018 or something.
My emulator runs like molasses, so I just play on my phone.
I still use an emulator to TM farm when there's no like energy consuming.
Wait,
event
you still
going on.
TM farm? Like, what is this? 2017?
How to get those trust points?
Dude, honestly, I have like 20,000% in Moogles at this point. I have no idea what to use them on.
Exactly. That's
Me
me.
too.
Yeah, that's kind of the point. I think I stopped using emulators quite abruptly as soon as we started being thrown Moogles at us, because
I
there's
did.
no point really.
have
I
to
did
go.
also use an emulator when I was clearing out some of the missions in the Chamber of the Vengeful, just because it was easier to time capping Crown Prince Noctis into the chain.
Oh, a man of culture.
Says Muspel hates finishers.
Well,
I won't
Muspel doesn't
finishers.
hate finishers,
I just think that they're bad for casual players.
but Aiden can't heal, so I don't know what you're talking about.
Just pair him with Chow, he'll be fine.
Ah,
Yeah,
There we go.
exactly. Exactly. See, that is why Chow is so good.
But then you're using Chow, and at that point, have you really gained anything?
Hey.
He's a good boy. Obviously, you gain everything.